The mining station Hadron 7 floated in the cold darkness between dead stars. Its metal walls hummed with the sound of machines digging deep into the asteroid below. Inside the station, different alien races worked together pulling precious metals from the rock. Most days, the station felt alive with the noise of drilling and the chatter of workers. Today was different. Today was quiet and cold. Ri crouched in the corner of Storage Bay 7, her massive body curled around three tiny forms. Her black scales caught no light in the dim room. Her golden eyes, usually bright like small suns, were now dull with worry and pain. She was 8 feet tall when she stood, with wings that could stretch wide enough to block doorways. Her people called her a warrior. Her enemies called her death itself. Right now, she felt helpless. In her arms lay her 3 babies. They were no bigger than human infants, covered in soft scales that should have been warm to touch. Instead, they felt cold like metal left in space. Their tiny chests moved up and down, but each breath came slower than the last. Their small eyes stayed closed. They made no sound. The heating system had died 3 days ago when the solar storm hit. The other parts of the station still had power, but this section had gone dark and cold. Nari had moved here because it was quiet and safe for her babies to be born. Now that same quiet felt like a tomb. She touched the smallest one, a tiny female with scales that should have been copper bright. The baby felt like ice. Nari made a low sound deep in her throat, a sound her people made when they grieved. Her mate would have known what to do. He would have found a way to make fire, to bring warmth. But raiders had killed him 5 weeks ago when they attacked the outer stations. She had fought them off alone, protecting her unborn children. Now she was still alone, and her babies were dying. The door to the storage bay opened with a soft hiss. Nari tensed, ready to fight, but it was only Jinne, the human medic. The small woman stepped inside carefully, holding a medical scanner in her hands. Humans always moved carefully around Nari, most aliens did. Her people had been at war with everyone for generations. The thermal readings are still dropping, Jinne said in the basic trade language all species used. I brought some heat packs from medical, but they will not last long. Nari looked at the small packets Jinne offered. They would give warmth for maybe an hour. Her babies needed days of heat to grow strong. They needed the kind of deep, steady warmth that came from the twin suns of her homeworld. They needed heat that felt like life itself. Why do you help me? Nari asked. Her voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. Jinne set the heat packs down and stepped back. Because they are babies, she said simply. Because you are a mother. The words made something twist inside Nari's chest. Humans were strange that way. They helped others even when it made no sense, even when those others had been enemies. Her people said it made humans weak. Right now, Nari thought it might be. The only thing that made them strong, the heat packs warmed the air for a while, but as the hours passed, the cold crept back in. The smallest baby's breathing grew even slower. Nari held all 3 against her body, trying to share what warmth she had left, but her own body temperature was dropping too. Without proper heat, she would die as well, and her babies would be alone. She thought about her options. The Vex were crystalline beings who lived in cold space. They could not help with heat. The Nethans were made of gas and energy. They could float through walls, but they knew nothing about keeping flesh warm. The Korthan were insect-like creatures who made their own heat, but they were deep in the mines and would not come to help a Drakari. That left only the humans. Nari had fought humans in the war. She had seen their ships burn and their soldiers fall, but she had also seen things that confused her. She had seen human medics trying to save wounded enemies. She had seen human engineers sharing their water with prisoners. She had seen human mothers protecting alien children during evacuations. Her people called such behavior madness. They said humans were too soft to survive in a hard galaxy. They said human kindness was just another word for weakness. But those same soft humans had fought her people to a standstill for 2 years. Those same weak humans had built stations like this one, where different species could work together without killing each other. The middle baby, A male with green-tinted scales made a tiny sound like a sigh. His breathing was growing weak. Nari made her decision. She gathered all 3 babies in her arms, wrapping them in the thermal emergency blankets from the heat packs. The blankets were thin and would not help much, but they were better than nothing. She stood slowly, her muscles stiff from hours of sitting in the cold. Her wings folded tight against her back as she moved toward the door. The corridor outside was warmer, but not warm enough. She walked slowly, her feet making no sound on the metal floor. Other workers had gone to their quarters or to the warmer sections of the station. She passed empty rooms and dark doorways. The only sounds were the distant hum of machines and the soft whisper of air through the vents. The human quarters were in Section C, near the engineering decks. Nari had never been there before. She had never wanted to be there before. Now she walked through corridors she had only seen on station maps. Carrying her dying children toward the one hope she had left, she stopped outside the door marked with human symbols. Her universal translator told her it said, HFY Engineering. She could hear movement inside, the sound of someone working with tools and machinery. She raised one clawed hand and knocked on the door. The sounds inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and a young human male looked up at her with wide eyes. Han-Woo stared up at the massive alien standing in his doorway. He had to tilt his head back to see her face. She was taller than any being he had ever met, with black scales that seemed to drink in the light from his room. Her golden eyes looked down at him with something he had never seen in a Drakari before. Fear in her arms. Wrapped in thin emergency blankets were 3 small shapes. They were not moving much. Han-Woo could see tiny faces, peaceful like sleeping children, but something was wrong. The air around them felt cold, and their breathing looked weak. Please, Nari said in the trade language. Her voice was deep and rough, but he could hear the desperation in it. My children are dying. Han-Woo had been an engineer for 5 years. He had fixed broken machines, repaired damaged systems, and solved problems that other people could not solve. But he had never faced anything like this. The Drakari were supposed to be enemies. Just 2 years ago, they had been shooting at each other across space. Now one of them stood at his door, asking for help. He looked at the 3 tiny aliens in her arms. They were so small, so quiet. He could see they were struggling to breathe. Whatever was wrong with them, they did not have much time. Come in, he said, stepping back from the door. Nari looked surprised. She had expected him to refuse, to close the door, to call security. Instead, this small human male was inviting her into his home. She stepped inside carefully, ducking her head to fit through the doorway. Her wings folded tight against her back. Han-Woo's quarters were small but warm. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth, showing green forests and blue oceans. There were tools and machine parts scattered on a workbench near the window. The air smelled like metal and oil, but also like the strange drinks humans made from plant leaves. What is wrong with them? Han-Woo asked, moving closer to look at the babies. They need heat, Nari said. My people are born in the warmth of twin suns. Without proper heat for 7 days, they will die. The station's heating system failed in my section. They have been cold for 3 days already. Han-Woo could see the problem immediately. The babies felt cold to touch, much colder than they should be. Their breathing was slow and shallow. They needed warmth, but not just any warmth. They needed the kind of deep, steady heat that would warm them from the inside out. The medical bay has warming units, he said. Janae tried. They are not strong enough. And the other species on this station, ... Nari's voice trailed off. She did not need to finish. The crystalline Vex lived in the cold of space. The gaseous Nethans had no understanding of flesh that needed warmth. The insect-like Korthan might help, but they stayed deep in the mines and trusted no one. So you came to the humans, Han-Woo said. I had no choice. Nari looked down at her children. Your people help others, even enemies. I have seen this. I do not understand it, but I have seen it. Han-Woo was already moving, his engineer's mind working on the problem. How much heat do they need? What kind of heat? Like sunlight, but steady, warm enough to feel in their bones. The temperature of blood when it runs fast. Nari watched him pull tools from his workbench. You will help me? Even though my people and your people were at war? They are babies, Haiyan-Wu said simply, the same words Jene had used. He was pulling apart a thermal regulation unit from his own life support system. War is for adults. Babies are just babies. He worked quickly, his hands moving with the skill of someone who had spent years fixing broken things. He took heating elements from 3 different machines and connected them to power cables. He pulled thermal sensors from a broken scanner and wired them to a control unit. As he worked, he explained what he was doing. This will create a warming chamber. The sensors will monitor their body temperature and adjust the heat automatically. It will be like being under warm sunlight, but constant. Nari watched in amazement as he built the device from spare parts. Her own people were warriors and builders, but they built with fire and force. This human built with patience and care, connecting small pieces into something that might save her children's lives. There, Haiyan-Wu said, powering up the device. Put them here. He had created a small chamber about the size of a human bed, with soft padding inside and heating elements built into the walls. Warm air began to flow gently through the space. The temperature readings on his control panel showed it was reaching the levels Nari had described. Nari placed her 3 babies inside the chamber carefully. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the smallest one, the little female, moved slightly. Her breathing seemed to grow a little stronger. It is working, Nari whispered, but as the hours passed, Haiyan-Wu realized the device was not enough. The babies were warming up, but not fast enough. They needed more heat, more constant warmth. He checked his calculations and found the problem. The heating elements were not powerful enough for 3 babies at once. I need to boost the power, he said. How? Haiyan-Wu looked at his own thermal regulation system, the one that kept his human body at the right temperature in the cold of space. It was designed to work for one person, but if he connected it to the warming chamber, I can link my own life support to the system, he said. Use my body's heat regulation to help warm them. That could hurt you, Nari said. Maybe, but it will save them. Without waiting for her answer, Haiyan-Wu began connecting cables from his personal life support system to the warming chamber. He attached thermal sensors to his own body and linked them to the control unit. When he finished, his body heat would help keep the babies warm. The moment he activated the connection, he felt the change. His body began working harder, generating more heat to share with the 3 small aliens. He felt tired immediately, but the readings on his panel showed the chamber's temperature rising to exactly what the babies needed. The 3 babies responded almost immediately. Their breathing grew stronger. Their tiny bodies began to move more. The smallest one opened her eyes for just a moment, showing copper-colored irises that gleamed like small coins. Thank you, Nari said quietly. Haiyan-Wu sat down heavily in a chair, feeling the strain of sharing his body heat with 3 others. Do not thank me yet. I do not know how long I can maintain this. But he was already planning improvements to the system, ways to make it more efficient, ways to help the babies without killing himself in the process. That was what humans did, he thought. They found ways to solve impossible problems, especially when lives depended on it. Outside his quarters, the station continued its work. Other aliens went about their business, unaware that in one small room, a human and a Drakari were working together to save 3 tiny lives that might change everything. 12 hours had passed since Haiyan-Wu connected his life support to the warming chamber. He sat slumped in his chair, pale and sweating despite the cool air in his quarters. His body was working overtime to generate heat for 4 beings instead of 1. The strain was showing on his face, but the babies were alive and growing stronger. Nari watched him with growing concern. She had seen warriors push themselves beyond their limits in battle. She recognized the signs of a body being pushed too hard. The human was sacrificing himself to save her children, and she did not understand why. You should rest, she said. Cannot disconnect the system? Haiyan-Wu replied weakly. The babies still need constant heat. If I sleep, the temperature might drop, the door chimed. Jin-A entered carrying a medical bag and food supplies. Behind her came Taemin, the station's security officer, and Young-Soo, the station commander. All three humans looked tired and worried. How are they doing? Jin-A asked, checking the readings on Hyun-Woo's control panel. Better, but Hyun-Woo is wearing himself out, Nari said. He has been connected to the system for 12 hours. Jin-A scanned Hyun-Woo with her medical equipment. The readings made her frown. Your body temperature is dropping. Your heart rate is too high? This is not sustainable? I know, Hyun-Woo said, but I have been thinking about improvements. If we can find a way to create thermal rhythms like their homeworld's twin suns, we might need less constant heat. Young-Soo stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. As station commander, he was responsible for everyone's safety. Harboring alien young, especially Drakari young, could get him court-martialed. But looking at the three tiny beings in the warming chamber, he made his decision. What do you need? He asked. Power, Hyun-Woo said immediately. More power than my personal systems can provide. And help figuring out the thermal patterns Drakari babies need. I can get you power, Young-Soo said. Taemin, start rerouting. Energy from non-essential systems. Lighting, entertainment systems, anything we can spare. Taemin nodded and left immediately. He had been a soldier before becoming security chief. He understood orders and he understood sacrifice. If the commander said to redirect power to save alien babies, then that was what they would do. Jin-A pulled out a datapad filled with information. I have been researching Drakari biology using the old medical databases. Their homeworld has 2 suns that create a complex thermal pattern. The heat rises and falls in specific cycles throughout their day. She showed them a graph with wavy lines that went up and down in regular patterns. If we can copy this rhythm, the babies' bodies will respond better. They will need less total heat, but it has to change at the right times. Hyun-Woo studied the data despite his exhaustion. His engineer's mind began working on the problem. I can program the heating elements to cycle like that. But I need more thermal sensors and better control systems. Take what you need from my quarters, Young-Soo said. Take what you need from anywhere on the station. For the next 6 hours, the 3 humans worked together like a well-trained team. Taemin brought power cables and rerouted energy systems. Jin-A monitored the baby's vital signs and adjusted the thermal patterns based on their responses. Young-Soo falsified maintenance reports to hide what they were doing and brought them food when they forgot to eat. Hyun-Woo slowly built a more sophisticated system. He connected thermal sensors throughout the warming chamber and programmed them to create the complex heat patterns of the Drakari homeworld. As the new system came online, he was finally able to disconnect his personal life support. The relief was immediate. His body temperature began to return to normal. His heart rate slowed down, but his eyes stayed focused on the control panel, watching the readings that told him whether the babies were responding to the new system. It is working, Nari said with amazement. Look, the 3 babies were moving more actively now. Their breathing was stronger and more regular. The smallest one, the female, opened her eyes and made a tiny sound like a bird chirping. Her brothers followed, blinking copper and gold eyes at the world around them, but the humans were not finished. Jin-A had discovered something else in the medical data. They need specific minerals in their first week of life. Minerals that are found in Drakari food, but also in human emergency rations. Our food can help them, Young-Soo asked. Some of it. The emergency supplements have concentrated minerals that growing Drakari need, if we mix it with water and feed it to them. Take whatever you need, Young-Soo said immediately. They ground up human emergency rations and mixed them with purified water. The result looked like gray soup, but when Jin-A tested it, the mineral content matched what baby Drakari needed. Nari fed the mixture to her children using a makeshift feeding tube. The babies responded even better to the food. Their scales began to show more color. Their movements became stronger. The middle baby, the male with green-tinted scales, grabbed onto Nari's finger with his tiny claws and held on. They are going to live, Nari whispered. Hyunwoo smiled despite his exhaustion. Yes, they are. But their success created new problems. Other aliens on the station had begun to notice the power fluctuations. Questions were being asked about why the human quarters were using so much energy. Some species were suspicious of what the humans might be hiding. Taemin brought reports of growing tension. The Korthan think we are building weapons. The Vex are asking about the thermal readings they are detecting. And there are rumors that Drakari ships have been spotted near the outer system. Rescue ships, Nari said. My people will come looking for me when I do not report in. Young-soo looked at the 3 healthy babies, now active and alert in their warming chamber. In 2 days, they had gone from dying to thriving. But their survival had created complications that could affect the entire station. How long until they can survive without the thermal chamber? He asked. 3 more days, Nari replied. Maybe 4. Then they will be strong enough to regulate their own body temperature. Then we keep them safe for 3 more days, Hyunwoo said firmly. Whatever it takes. The 4 adults looked at each other, human and Drakari united by a common purpose. They had saved 3 lives, but now they had to protect them. And protect themselves from the consequences of their choice to help a former enemy. Outside the station, space was no longer empty. Long-range sensors had detected ships moving through the asteroid belt. Ships with the distinctive energy signatures of the Drakari fleet. On the 4th day, everything changed. Hyunwoo woke to the sound of chirping. Not the mechanical beeping of his machines, but actual chirping like small birds welcoming the morning. He sat up quickly and looked at the warming chamber. The 3 baby Drakari were awake and active. The smallest one, the female, was standing on unsteady legs and making musical sounds. Her scales had turned a brilliant copper color that seemed to glow in the chamber's warm light. Her brothers were moving around as well, their scales showing deep green and bright gold. They are healthy, Nari said. She was sitting nearby, watching her children with wonder in her golden eyes. Stronger than I dared hope. Jin-ae ran her medical scanner over each baby. Their vital signs are perfect, body temperature normal, brain activity excellent. They have made a complete recovery. But as Hyunwoo approached the warming chamber, something unexpected happened. The smallest baby saw him and made excited chirping sounds. She reached toward him with tiny clawed hands, clearly wanting him to pick her up. She knows you, Nari said with surprise. They all do, Jin-ae added, watching as the other 2 babies also turned toward Hyunwoo. Look at their reactions. Hyunwoo carefully reached into the chamber and picked up the female baby. She immediately snuggled against his chest, making contented purring sounds. Her tiny body was warm and felt completely healthy. When he tried to hand her back to Nari, the baby made distressed sounds and reached back toward him. I do not understand, Nari said. She should only trust her own kind. Jin-ae checked her datapad. According to the research, Drakari babies imprint on whoever provides them with warmth in their first days of life. Usually that is their parents. But Hyunwoo's thermal signature has been keeping them alive. They think he is their father. The implications hit everyone at the same time. These 3 baby Drakari, who should instinctively fear all non-Drakari, had bonded with a human. They trusted him completely. They wanted his attention and comfort. Young-soo's communication device beeped urgently. Commander, we have incoming ships, 3 Drakari vessels, heavily armed. They are requesting permission to dock. How long do we have? Young-soo asked. 20 minutes, maybe less? Nari stood up, her expression becoming serious. That will be Elder Beora and War Leader Junho. They have come to find me and my children. They will expect either to recover our bodies or to punish whoever harmed us. What will they do when they find healthy babies who have bonded with humans? Taemin asked. I do not know, Nari admitted. This has never happened before. Hyunwoo was still holding the baby female, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Will they try to take the children away? They are my children, Nari said firmly. But my people do not understand human kindness. They may think you have done something to control their minds. Young-Soo made a decision. We tell them the truth. We show them what happened and let them judge for themselves. That could be dangerous, Taemin warned. If they think we have harmed Drakari Young... then we face the consequences, Young-Soo said. But we do not run and we do not lie. These babies are alive because we helped. That speaks for itself. 20 minutes later, the docking bay filled with the sound of heavy footsteps. Elder Bo-Ra entered first, a massive Drakari female with silver scales and ancient scars covering. Her arms behind her came war leader Junho, even larger than Nari. With scales like black metal and eyes that burned like red stars, they were followed by 6 Drakari warriors, all armed and ready for battle. The group moved through the station corridors like a force of nature, other aliens stepping quickly out of their way. When they reached Hyun-Woo's quarters, Young-Soo and his team were waiting. The 3 human officers stood at attention, showing respect but not fear. Nari stood beside them, holding one of her babies. Hyun-Woo held the other 2, both sleeping peacefully in his arms. Elder Bo-Ra looked around the small room, taking in the makeshift warming chamber, the medical equipment, and the sight of human and Drakari standing together. Her ancient eyes missed nothing. Nari, daughter of the flame, she said in the deep, formal voice of her people, we came expecting to find your corpse and avenge your death. Instead we find you healthy and standing with humans. Explain this. Nari stepped forward. Elder, my children were dying. The station's heating failed during the solar storm. I had no choice but to seek help from the humans. They saved my babies' lives. War leader Junho moved closer, his red eyes fixed on Hyun-Woo. You expect us to believe that humans helped a Drakari, that they risked themselves for enemy Young? Look. At the evidence, Young-Soo said calmly. Look at the children. Bo-Ra approached Hyun-Woo slowly. The 2 babies in his arms woke up and looked at her with bright, curious eyes. They showed no fear of the imposing elder. Instead, they chirped happily and reached toward her with tiny hands. They are healthy? Bo-Ra said with surprise. More than healthy. They are thriving. Yes, Nari said. Because this human shared his own life energy to keep them warm. Because all the humans worked together to build systems that could save them. Because they gave their own food to feed my children. Junho's expression changed from suspicion to confusion. Why would they do this? The female baby in Hyun-Woo's arms made a sound and looked up at him. He gently stroked her small head with one finger, and she purred contentedly. The sight of a human being so gentle with a Drakari child clearly shocked both visitors. Because they are babies, Hyun-Woo said simply. Because their mother needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. Bo-Ra stared at him for a long moment. You know what this means, human? These children have imprinted on you. In our culture, that makes you their clutch father. They will always see you as family. I know, Hyun-Woo said. I am honored. The elder's scarred face showed the first hint of a smile. You say you are honored to be clutch father to Drakari Young, even though our peoples were at war? War is for governments and armies, Hyun-Woo replied. Children are for everyone to protect. Junho stepped back, his warriors training warring with what he was seeing. This is impossible. Humans are weak. They think with their emotions instead of their strength. Maybe that is exactly why they could save the children when we could not, Bo-Ra said quietly. She reached out and gently took the male baby from Hyun-Woo's arms. The child looked at her calmly, unafraid. When she handed him back, the baby immediately snuggled against the human's chest. Nari, your children are healthy and strong, Bo-Ra said formally. You have chosen their clutch father well? The debt of 3 lives is not easily repaid. Young-Soo stepped forward. We ask for no payment, elder. We did what anyone would do. No, Bo-Ra said, looking around at all the humans. You did what no one else would do. You risked yourselves. For strangers, for enemies, that is not weakness. That is a strength we do not understand. She turned to Junho. Send word to the fleet. Tell them what we have found here. Tell them that humans saved Drakari Young with no thought of reward. Elder, Junho protested, the implications of this. will change everything, Ba'ara finished, as they should. The babies continued to chirp and play, unaware that their very existence was about to reshape the relationship between two species. In their innocent trust of both human and Drakari, they had become living proof that cooperation was possible between former enemies. 6 months after the events on Hadron 7, the galaxy was talking. News of the miracle of Hadron 7 had spread through both human and Drakari. Space faster than any military report. 3 baby Drakari saved by human kindness. A warrior mother who trusted her former enemies. A human engineer who risked his life for alien children. The story had captured imaginations across hundreds of worlds. Duhayon sat in the diplomatic conference room on Station Unity, looking across the table at So Young, the Drakari peace speaker. Between them lay the draft of a document that would have been impossible just a year ago. The Interspecies Emergency Aid Protocol? Article 7 still needs work, So Young said, her translated voice coming through the communication device. How do we define emergency situations that cross species lines? The same way Haiyan-Wu did, Dehayan replied. When lives are at stake, species does not matter. Help first, ask questions later. So Young's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of amusement among her people. You humans make it sound so simple, maybe because it is simple, Dehayan said. The complicated part is getting everyone else to see it. He was right about that. Not everyone was happy with the changes happening across the galaxy. The footage from Hadron 7, showing human and Drakari working together to save the babies, had inspired many. But it had also frightened others on the human military base at Kepler Station. Admiral Yunji watched the same footage with disgust. Sentimental nonsense, she said to her aide. Those babies will grow up to be warriors who could kill thousands of humans. But Admiral, her aide said carefully, the public loves this story. Support for continued peace talks has jumped to 80%. The public does not understand war like we do, Yunji said. They see cute alien babies and forget that those babies' parents killed our soldiers just 2 years ago. She was already planning how to use the situation to her advantage. If she could prove that the Drakari were using the rescued children as propaganda tools, she could turn public opinion back toward military solutions. Meanwhile, in the deep reaches of Drakari space, War Commander Minho was having similar thoughts. He stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, watching reports of Drakari citizens calling for permanent peace with humans. This is poison, he told his officers. These soft feelings will make us weak. Humans save 3 children, and suddenly we forget centuries of warrior tradition. But Commander, one of his officers said, Elder Bu'a herself has endorsed the peace talks. She says the humans showed honor in protecting Drakari young. Bu'a is old, Minho said coldly. She has forgotten what it means to be strong. But for every voice speaking against the new cooperation, there were 10 speaking for it. The 3 babies, now healthy 6-month-old children, had become symbols of hope across the galaxy. They lived with Nari on Hadron 7, but Haiyan-Wu visited them every day. The station had been designated as the first official joint human-Drakari facility, and both species were working together to expand it. The babies played in special gardens designed by both human and Drakari engineers. The smallest, the female now called Ember by Haiyan-Wu, had learned to walk and was exploring everything with endless curiosity. Her brothers Spark and Flame were just as active. All 3 were learning both human and Drakari languages, switching between them without effort. More importantly, they were showing abilities that surprised everyone. When a Vex worker was injured in the mines, little Ember had somehow known exactly where the injury was, even though Vex were crystalline beings completely different from both humans and Drakari. When a supply ship arrived with sick crew members, Spark had become agitated until the medical team found a hidden infection that their scanners had missed. They are developing unusual empathy, Janae reported to the growing team of scientists studying the children. They seem to sense the health and emotional state of any living being, regardless of species. It is because they were raised by both human and Drakari, Nari explained. They do not see difference between species like we do. To them, all thinking beings are simply family. The implications were staggering. If children could be raised to see past species differences, what did that mean for the future? Several human and Drakari families had already volunteered to participate in joint child-raising programs, but the real test came when the Korani plague struck. The Korani were silicon-based beings who lived in the hottest regions of space. They had never been involved in the human-Drakari war because their biology was so different that contact was rare. But now they were dying from a disease that turned their silicon bodies into brittle glass. Traditional medicine could not help them. Human doctors did not understand silicon biology. Drakari healers worked with carbon-based life. The Korani were facing extinction. That was when Ember made her suggestion. She was playing with building blocks in the station's central garden when she looked up at Haiyan Wu and said, "In perfect human language, the hot people need cold fire." "What do you mean, lean little one?" Haiyan Wu asked. "Like when I was sick," Ember said. "I needed warm that changed like suns. Hot people need cold that moves like water." It took the combined efforts of Sujin, a human xenobiologist, and Dong Wu, a Drakari thermal engineer, to understand what the child meant. The Korani needed a form of cooling that cycled like heat, creating temperature variations that would strengthen their silicon structures instead of making them brittle. Working together, human and Drakari scientists created mobile cooling units that could provide the complex thermal patterns the Korani needed. The first joint human-Drakari medical mission launched within days. The sight of the rescue fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human medical ships flew alongside Drakari thermal control vessels. Human doctors worked with Drakari engineers to operate the new cooling systems. And coordinating it all were the three young dragons, now old enough to translate between the different ways humans and Drakari thought about problems. The mission was a complete success. The Korani plague was stopped, and an entire species was saved from extinction. More importantly, it proved that human-Drakari cooperation could accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. News reports showed human medics and Drakari engineers celebrating together after saving the last Korani colony. The images were broadcast across the galaxy, showing that former enemies had become true partners, but the most powerful image was simpler. It showed Ember, now walking confidently on her own, holding hands with both Haiyan Wu and Nari as they walked through the medical station where Korani patients were recovering. The caption read, "The Future of the Galaxy." On Station Unity, Du Haiyan and So Young signed the Interspecies Emergency Aid Protocol. The document established formal procedures for cross-species medical aid with joint human-Drakari response teams, ready to help any species in crisis. This would not have been possible without those three children, So Young said, as she added her seal to the document. And it would not have been possible without one engineer who decided to help a desperate mother, Du Haiyan replied, but even as they celebrated, both diplomats knew that the real work was just beginning. There were still those who opposed cooperation between species. There were still those who believed that strength came from standing alone rather than working together. The three children who had started it all continued to grow and learn, unaware that they had already changed the galaxy forever. They played and laughed and learned, seeing all the different species around them as simply part of their extended family. Their very existence was proof that the future could be different from the past, that former enemies could become friends, that the strongest bonds were built not through conquest, but through the simple act of helping those in need. 1 year after the miracle of Hadron 7, the galaxy held its breath as representatives from 12 species gathered on Station Unity. For the signing of the Hadron Accords, the main conference hall buzzed with translated conversations in dozens of languages. Humans sat next to Drakari, who sat next to Vex, who sat next to Korani, still cooling themselves with the thermal units that had saved their species. Even the gas-like Nethans had managed to compress themselves into communication. Pods for the ceremony. At the center of it all sat three figures who had made this moment possible. Nari, now bearing the official title of Bridge Mother, wore ceremonial armor that combined human engineering with Drakari craftsmanship. Beside her, Hyun-woo wore the thermal regulation suit that Nari had designed for him, allowing his human body to work comfortably alongside Drakari in extreme temperatures. On his arm were small scales, grafted there in a Drakari ceremony that made him an honorary member of her clan. Between them sat the three children who had started it all. Ember, now a confident 1-year-old, sat quietly in a specially designed chair that could adjust to her growing body. Her copper scales gleamed in the station's lights, and her bright eyes watched everything with intense curiosity. Spark and Flame, her brothers, were equally alert, their green and gold scales catching the light as they moved. The children were no longer just survivors. They had become teachers, showing adults from different species how to work together. They spoke 3 languages fluently and understood basic concepts in 6 more. Most importantly, they saw no difference between species when it came to friendship and trust. Young-soo, now promoted to admiral for his role in the crisis, stood to address the assembly. 1 year ago, a desperate mother came to a human engineer, asking for help. What happened next changed everything we thought we knew about cooperation between species. The room fell silent as he continued. These accords are not just about trade agreements or territorial boundaries. They are about recognizing that when lives are at stake, we are all one family. The Hadron Accords establish several key principles. Emergency medical aid would be provided to any species that requested it, regardless of political relationships. Joint research programs would share medical and engineering knowledge across species lines. Most importantly, a permanent joint response fleet would be maintained, ready to help with any crisis that affected multiple species. The signing ceremony began with the Korani representative, her silicon body still supported by the human Drakari cooling system that had saved her people. She spoke in crystalline tones that rang like musical chimes. The Korani pledge our knowledge of high-temperature survival to this alliance. We will help any who face the burning of space. The Vex representative was next, his crystalline form refracting the light into rainbow patterns. The Vex offer our understanding of cold space survival. No being should die from the emptiness between stars. One by one, each species made their commitment to the alliance. But the most powerful moment came when Elder Biora stood to speak for the Drakari. My people have been warriors for 1,000 generations, she said in her deep, formal voice. We believe that strength came from standing alone, from defeating all enemies. But these 3 children have taught us a different truth. True strength. Comes from protecting all life, not just our own. She looked directly at Hyun-woo and the 3 children. When a human engineer chose to save Drakari young, he showed us what real courage looks like. When my people accept him as clutch father. To our children, we choose a future based on cooperation instead of conquest. Do Hyun sign for the human delegation. Humanity pledges our innovation and our willingness to help others, even former enemies. We choose to measure strength not by what we can destroy, but by what we can save. But the real magic happened. After the formal ceremonies ended, the 3 children, now free to move around the station, became the center of attention. Spark had learned to create small thermal patterns with his developing abilities, amusing the adult Drakari by making tiny, warm spots in the air. Flame could somehow sense when any being was feeling unwell, alerting medical staff to problems before they became serious. And Ember had developed an even more remarkable ability. She could help different species understand each other, not just through language but through emotion. When a Vex engineer and a Nethan designer were struggling to communicate about a joint project, Ember somehow helped them feel what the other was trying to say. She bridges minds as well as species, Janae observed, watching the interaction. It is like she can translate thoughts and feelings between completely different types of consciousness. The children had become living symbols of what cooperation could achieve. But they were also just children, playing and learning and growing up in a universe that was becoming more connected every day. Later that evening, Hyun-woo sat in the observation deck of Station Unity, watching the stars and thinking about how much had changed. The 3 children played nearby under the watchful eyes of both Nari and Janae. Human and Drakari children from the station had joined them, all playing together as if species differences did not exist. "Do you ever regret it?" Nari asked, settling her large form beside his chair. "Opening your door that day. Taking on the responsibility of raising children who are not your species." Haiyan Wu reached out to catch Ember as she ran toward him, laughing as he lifted her into the air. "How could I regret this? Look what came from one moment of choosing to help." "The galaxy is still not perfect," Nari pointed out. "There are still those who oppose cooperation. Admiral Yunji is gathering support for renewed military buildup. War Commander Minho speaks of returning to the old ways. There will always be those who choose fear over hope," Haiyan Wu said. "But look around you. Look at the children playing together. Look at the rescue fleets being built by combined crews. Look at the research stations where different species work side by side." He set Ember down and watched her run back to play with her brothers and friends. One act of kindness created all of this. Imagine what 1,000,000 acts of kindness could create. On the other side of the station, Sujin and Dongwu were putting the finishing touches on the new emergency response protocols. The human xenobiologist and Drakari thermal engineer had become close friends while working on the Korani rescue mission. Now they were designing systems that could help any species facing environmental or medical crises. The next mission request came in today, Sujin said, showing Dongwu a datapad. "The Korath are having problems with their hive mind network. They think a human Drakari team might be able to help. Another impossible problem that requires different ways of thinking," Dongwu said with satisfaction. "I am beginning to see why the children find this so natural. When you stop seeing differences as barriers, they become tools for solving problems." Back in the observation deck, the children had settled down for the evening. Ember was curled up against Haiyan Wu's side, while Spark and Flame leaned against Nari. The other children had been taken back to their families, but these three always ended their day together with both their parents. "Tell us the story," Ember said sleepily. It had become a nightly tradition. Haiyan would tell them the story of how they met, how a desperate mother and a willing engineer had found each other in the cold darkness of space. "Once upon a time," Haiyan began, "there was a mother who loved her children so much that she was willing to ask for help from strangers. And there was an engineer who believed that helping others was the most important job anyone could have." The children listened with sleepy contentment, hearing again how their story had changed the galaxy. They did not fully understand the political implications or the historical significance. To them, it was simply the story of how their family came to be. "And they all lived happily ever after," Flame mumbled, his eyes already closing. "Not ever. After," Haiyan corrected gently, "but today and tomorrow. And for as long as we choose to keep helping each other." Outside the observation deck, the combined fleets of 12 species patrolled the space lanes, ready to respond to any emergency. Research stations buzzed with activity as different species shared their knowledge. And across the galaxy, children of different species were growing up together, learning that cooperation was stronger than conflict, the miracle that had begun with 3 dying. Babies in a cold storage bay had become something larger than anyone had imagined. It had become proof that the universe could be a place where former enemies became family, where differences became strengths, and where the simple act of helping others could change everything. The 3 children slept peacefully, surrounded by the warmth of 2 species that had learned to love across the vast differences between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to help others. But tonight, they were simply a family, watching the stars and dreaming of a future where kindness was the strongest force in the galaxy.